Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hey, this is Tanner the Bulldozer Bozer.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Tofnell, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy hump day. Hope everybody's doing well out there. First off, Tom freaking Brady is unstoppable. Back to another Super Bowl at 43 years of age. Like, the guy is just incredible. And, I'm a Tom Brady fan. I certainly hope he wins one more. And I know there's going to be a ton of Tom haters out there. Hate on, folks. I love it. Until Tom Brady retires, man, like, the guy is just pure class. And here's a funny side note. Anybody out there realize he was drafted by the Montreal Expos? He was a left-handed batting catcher with power. And from what it says, he was drafted in the 18th round of the 1995 MLB draft. There you go. Could have been a Montreal Expo. Just saying. He's probably going to win another Super Bowl. That's where my head's at. We got a great one on tap for you today. Now, before we get to today's episode, though, let's get on to a different type of tap. First sponsor here, Three Trees Tap and Kitchen. They're working in collaboration with Kinsman and the Kinettes. They're doing a Telemiracle Steak Night. The Kinsman will be cooking steaks outside Three Trees Tap and Kitchen, and Three Trees will be packaging the steaks with salad, potato, and dessert. The Kinsman and Kinettes will deliver these meals to your door if you live in Lloydminster. If you live outside of Lloydminster, you can still take part. You just got to drive over to Three Trees and pick it up. That is Saturday, February 6th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 for the steak dinner, or if you got kids, you can get them involved. $10 gets you chicken fingers and fries. Each ticket purchased includes free entry into some door prizes and delivery of the meal directly to your door, once again, if you live in Lloydminster. The night doesn't end with the meal. They're also providing live stream entertainment that will include music by Bud's Busted 9 Irons, live updates on silent auction items, and celebrity cameos and door prizes. So for tickets, call Louis Stang, 306-821-7275. All right? All that money going to Telemiracle. Super cool what they're trying to pull off here in these weird times. So lend a hand, guys. That'd be pretty cool for a bunch of the listeners here to support what they're doing there. HSI Group. They're the local oil field burners and combustion experts that can help make sure you have a compliant system working for you. The team also offers security, surveillance, and automation products for residential, commercial, livestock, and agricultural applications. A side note or a little note on their security systems. I've talked an awful lot about the fob key, right? So instead of having an actual key to get into your office building, you get this fob key and you just swipe. And I mean, right now in the middle of, what is it, like minus 35 with the wind chill, you just swipe it, you're in and out of the door easy. But I was in here pretty late there this past week. I don't know, I came in like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, gave it a swipe, and it gives updates to Wade on the building, right? Obviously, if somebody's coming and going. So he just shot me a text. And I always think that's pretty cool how far technology has come. That, if you got a building or a house and you want to see when it's opening, doors and closing, who's coming and going, that kind of thing, you can get it right to your phone, up minute by minute updates kind of thing. And they got that technology, and that's super cool. They're local guys that if you got any questions, you just give them a call, and there they are, right? So stop in today, 3902 52nd Street, or give Brody or Kim a call at 306-825-6310. They can do a heck of a lot better job explaining how they can help you. They use technology to give you peace of mind so you can focus on the things that truly matter. Jen Gilbert and team for over 40 years, since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Banker Cityside Realty have served Lloydminster and the surrounding area. Here's a little did you know. When it comes to rental properties, they are the biggest licensed residential property management company in the city of Lloydminster. They deal with over 250 rental units. We're talking houses, apartments, and condos. So if you're a person that's trying to rent out your house and you're like, man, this is a ton of work, get them involved. They even do direct deposit. See, all you got to do is give them your property. They manage it for you. They get rid of all the headaches, and there's money in the account every month, right? On the flip side, for anyone looking for a rental property, they even do like for small agreements, right? Like how long you got to be in a rental property. They do month by month tenancies. So like that's pretty cool too. So that's Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Give them a call, 780-875-3343. Shout out to Read 'em Right and Miss Deanna Wandler for hooking me up. SNP billboard or the logo behind my head or the quote on the wall. Everything I do when it comes to artwork, getting it on some signs out in the community. That's where I go. Read 'em Right. Really enjoy dealing with Deanna Wandler. She, like I said I think it was last week. Like I just tell her something and then she'll do it. I'm like, I don't like that. And then okay, we'll get it right. And that's what they do. They get it right. Finally, Gartner Management is a Lloydminster-based company specializing in all types of rental properties to help meet your needs, whether you're looking for a small office like I got or 6,000 square foot commercial space. Give Wade Gartner a call today, 780-808-5025. If you're heading into any of these businesses, make sure you let them know you heard about them on the podcast. And if you're interested in advertising on the show, visit SeanNewmanPodcast.com, top right corner. Send me an email, and I'll get back to you, all right? Now, let's get on to this T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Originally from Grand Prairie, Alberta, he was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques in the 4th round, 74th overall in the 1981 NHL entry draft. He spent 5 seasons between the Nordiques and their farm team, the Fredericton Express. He would also go on to play with the Washington Capitals and the Buffalo Sabres. Over his NHL career, he played in 338 games with a 3.47 goals against average and an .885 save percentage. On March 22, 1989, a skate blade cut his neck open, slicing his jugular vein. It was only by the quick actions of the trainer, Jim Pizzatelli, that he survived. On October 6, 2008, he shot himself in the head. This man does not hide behind the dark problems he has faced in regards to anxiety, OCD, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, he travels around the world as a mental health advocate. I'm talking about Clint Malarchuk. So buckle up. Here we go.
Hi, folks. This is former NHL goaltender Clint Malarchuk. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Well, welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Clint Malarchuk. So first, thanks for hopping on with me.
Oh, I'm glad I could. I was working and ended up working later than usual, kind of an emergency situation. And I just walked in the door and sat down and boom, there you are.
Well, it's, you got to love technology. It's certainly come an awful long ways since you were a kid. Heck, since I was a kid. And the fact that we can do this and it feel relatively comfortable, like talking to a screen, being able to see the other person. It's certainly opened up the world for all of us, including, us two sitting here today.
Yeah. Are we audio and visual or just we're both?
You betcha. They're going to be able to see your pretty face.
Well, I should have shaved then. You should have put a tooth in.
Yeah, that's right. I got to give a shout out to Kent Staniforth. He's a guy here in Lloydminster, runs a Fountain Tire. And my podcast is coming up on 2 years of me doing this. And he said, here's a guy you should check out. And I'll be very clear, Clint. I was born in 86. So your career was you were well past by the time I was, early enough to remember. But as TSN or Sports Center or anything like that, I think everyone's probably seen the skate. But when I got given your book, it was probably 8 months ago now. And I read probably the first 2 chapters and I went, I don't know if I can handle this book. Like it was right at the start of COVID. And I was just like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And then I finally got up the gumption and picked it back up. And man, it just doesn't relent. You got a hell of a story.
Well, I think part of it was If I'm going to do something, go big or go home attitude. And it's a raw book, definitely raw. I didn't hold back. I really don't know how to hold back. And the editing was very, very little. Pretty much what I put down or said to the guy that co-wrote it with me, we didn't change much at all. I tried to take a few of the F-bombs out, but
It adds to it. I mean, like you get this sense of like, hold on, it's gonna be a ride here for once I picked it back up again, I don't think I put it back down. Actually, I know I didn't. I just like I was at like page 30 and I was kind of like, all right, we'll pick it back up. And then it was just, like 5 straight hours or whatever it was of just, okay, well, I can't put it down now because I don't know what's happening next. Cause most movies you watch, they got this climax and then like the happy ending that just seems to, and everything rides off in the sunset. And it was a tough read. And I was hoping that, on the podcast here, we could talk a little bit about it. And some of your journey, starting off with maybe your childhood. I was fascinated by your uncle's, I think it was your uncle's place, the old rotting school bus. And just share some stories of Grand Prairie. Cause I mean, Grand Prairie, although a few hours from where I'm at, I think most people in this area have certainly played hockey there or other sports and have been through Grand Prairie.
well, Grand Prairie, when I grew up there, it was very small. It's really exploded. Procter and Gamble came in, and of course, oil and gas, and I don't even think there was one. There was one traffic light when I was a kid there, so it was definitely small town, ranching, farming community. There was some oil going on, and but yeah, I grew up. I worked on a ranch, a cousin's ranch, and my other cousin, his dad, my uncle, was a farmer, and he had an old gutted school bus that we go out and live in there, and it was pretty it was pretty rugged for sure. I mean, and he was a character, so a lot of the people up there that I grew up with were real characters. I guess that environment of farming, ranching, and rednecks develops a character in people. But I played most of my minor hockey in Edmonton, and that's where I kind of started to excel at mid-teen age, and I played junior in Fort Saskatchewan, and that's when I thought maybe I can do this as make the NHL. Of course, it's always been a dream, but then maybe you start thinking of it as a reality. And played a couple of years in Portland in the WHL with the Winterhawks, and drafted by Quebec, which was
You,
definitely, it was a culture shock.
I'll say this though, if we can rewind back to when you're a kid, from what I've read of it, the book and everything else, listening to a couple podcasts where you talk, you were a pretty driven kid. Like the story about picking cans to get your first set of skates and buying them off of Ken Hitchcock of all people.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just don't know a whole lot of kids that would do that.
Well, I was, backing up, I guess. My dad, God bless him, he's a great guy, but he was a kind of an abusive alcoholic, and it's a progressive disease, and it got pretty ugly at home, and I developed a lot of anxiety, probably because of that. And definitely had undiagnosed obsessive compulsive disorder. And, I just wanted to be a hockey player, and we didn't have a lot of money after dad left. So yeah, I'd go pick up pop bottles and pop cans and that at the construction sites. I'd ride my bike out there. And then when my mom would come home, we'd get in the car and go and put them all in the trunk, whole bunch of garbage bags. I made a lot of money doing that. And that's how I bought my equipment, my skates. And ironically, yeah, Ken Hitchcock, who worked at United Cycle. And Ken was great. I was just a kid, and he kind of knew we didn't have a lot of money. So he'd get me the best pair of secondhand skates or pads or gloves or, whatever I needed. And, he took care of me as a kid. He really did. And I'm still in touch with Ken. I coached with him in Columbus. So, we've known each other, ever since I was a little boy. And, it's funny how you go through life, and there's certain people that have you develop a respect for, especially as you get older and you look back and go, you know what, they kind of took care of me. And Kim was one of those guys, and I really appreciate it to this day. Like I said, I just talked to him last week on the phone, and yeah, that the childhood trauma that I had, definitely, I think, but put it this way, I had some real struggles, especially with depression and anxiety and the OCD. But and it would wane at times, and other times it'd be really strong. And the thing is, I really believe that I made it to the NHL because of that OCD, because I was very repetitious, and I was doing workouts when I was 12 years old, when kids are outside playing, and I'd always say, no, I got to do 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and run up and down the stairs, and do a little workout before I go out and play with the kids. And usually when we play, it was ball hockey or street hockey, or we were in the winter, we were on the ice out in the outdoor rinks. So yeah, it was a funny time as a kid looking back. There was definitely some issues going on with me. I was once hospitalized for 2 months with severe anxiety, and back then they really didn't know what to do with me. They sent me home after 2 months and told my mom, "Good luck, you got a real anxious kid there." And I was very sensitive. Things bothered me a lot, and of course that OCD funneled all that emotion into just working hard to be a hockey player. And fortunately it paid off. It was later on in life where it became a big issue and became out of control. I had a decent NHL career, and then in 1989, playing for the Buffalo Sabres, I cut my jugular vein and almost died. And Sean, a lot of people, when I tell this story, I always emphasize the trauma, even though at the time I didn't realize any of that stuff. But I prepared for death. I mean, I got up off the ice, skated off the ice, because I didn't want my mom to watch me die on TV watching the game. And I called one trainer to hold my hand because I was preparing for death, and I told another trainer to call my mom, tell her I love her. So basically, I'm emphasizing that I was preparing for death. And that's when my life really changed. I got through that season. I came back in 10 days. So ultimately, in upstate New York, Buffalo area, I became a hero. I epitomized everything they loved in an athlete in Buffalo. Hardworking, gritty, no talent, and 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 I just, their love and support and my adrenaline got me through that rest of that season. It was the next season where things had kind of died down, and that adrenaline had worn off. And that's when I started to really struggle. The OCD, which of course I had as a kid, but it was all undiagnosed, the anxiety, depression, panic attacks. But Sean, I started having nightmares, and they were real. They weren't a bad dream. They were reliving that traumatic event. So it got to a point where I didn't want to fall asleep, but I needed to sleep. So I'd sit in a chair, like a hard chair, and kind of nod off like you do on an airplane. But I wouldn't go into a REM sleep, therefore avoiding the nightmare. And it was about 10 days of no sleep, or very, very little. Now I'm sleep deprived. I'm going to practice. My eyes are burning red from lack of sleep. And we had a Super Bowl party at our captain, Pat LaFontaine's house. And, all that I was going through, and no one knew what I was going through, because I was this hero in Buffalo that came back and was playing. And at the party, I didn't stay long. I'm tired. And I go home, and I had some painkillers because I had a fractured thumb, and we played with those things back then. and and I wasn't really taking the painkillers much, but I read the bottle: "Do not drink with alcohol; will make you drowsy." So I thought, damn, I'm going to take a few extra, get real drowsy, and then I drained a bottle of scotch. Well, my heart stopped. And obviously, they rushed me to the hospital. I was revived. And that's where next day, the psychiatrist was asking me all these questions. They thought it might have been a suicide attempt, and it wasn't. It was sleep deprivation, a stupid thing, and everything that I'd been going through. And so I told the psychiatrist, about the nightmares, about the panic attacks. The OCD was so bad, it was hard for me to leave the house for practice. And so I got diagnosed with, these mental disorders. And that was a journey of about 2.5 years of different doctors, specialists, medications. And they even put me on a drug called Haldol. And Haldol is usually for schizophrenia. It's highly sedative, which might be good for some people, but not an NHL goalie trying to stop a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot. I was basically, sedated playing, and my play was suffering, and I got sent to the minors. And it was in the minors, devastated as I was, it was a blessing in disguise because I my first game I let in 6 goals on 4 goals on 6 shots, and the first period, and I was pulled. And 4 goals on 6 shots in the minors. I was a mess, and I sat on the bench for the rest of the game with the towel over my head and just cried. I was sobbing. I couldn't even play in the minors yet. Hockey was becoming more of a distant. Yeah, I was devastated and being in the minor, but I had all these other issues that were bigger. They were life issues compared to hockey issues. And that's where I got got into the leading specialist in obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's where my journey picked up. Life turned around. I got on some really good medication. I resumed my career. After that, I was coaching. And for about 14 years, I did really, really good. And then things got messy again. I um, I was on this when you're coach or a player and you got in pro hockey, you got a team doctor and you need a refill and a prescription. You just say, "Hey, I need this refilled." I take it for my OCD or whatever. And over time, doing that, my body was getting immune to, and the drug was not working on me anymore. And I didn't know, it was gradual, I'm sure. And the decline was worse than I had ever been. The depression came back, the anxiety, the panic attacks, the nightmares, it all came back. And um, that was a really, really tough time. And I'd gone 20 years with undiagnosed PTSD. No one, I was never diagnosed with PTSD from the accident. And that's when I went behind the barn and I was shooting my 22, and my wife came home and said, "What are you?" She could tell I'd been, um, crying. I was sweating. It was hot out, and I'd been drinking on a binge. And something, Sean, people need to know is there's a huge correlation between self-medicating, like with me, it was beer, and mental illness. And the problem is because it works, and but it's not a good way to medicate, like, because what 2 beers would do, if I'm depressed, it'd make me happy. Anxious, it would calm me down. OCD tendencies, it would calm my mind. So then it's 2 beers, then it's 4 beers, then it's 8 beers, then it's 12 beers. I was drinking like 25 beers a day just to get through a day. And mind you, that was American beer and I'm Canadian, so you cut that in half. And um, so that's when my wife came home, and she said, "What is going on?" I said, "I just can't stop my head." And I put the gun under my chin and pulled the trigger. And amazingly, a thick skull like a goalie would have, the bullet got lodged in my skull. It didn't. I didn't lose consciousness or anything. And now they're trying to get me on a life flight, a helicopter. And I'm like, no way, I'm getting on, because I've done my own stitches before and things like that. I'll be fine. I'll stitch up the hole. And
But you shot yourself in the head.
I know exactly but this is the craziness and the paranoia that I had. And I'm like, this helicopter might crash. Here, I got a bullet in my head. And the paramedics were saying, "Sir, you got a bullet in your skull or in your brain. We don't know. And it may move and you may die." And I'm like, "I'll be fine." And I went it. I finally, they sedated me and got me on the helicopter. And one of my friends says, "You better give him a luck. You don't want this animal waking up in the middle of the air. He'll rip that helicopter apart." Because he was a dear friend, a colleague. He was a veterinarian, and he really knew my struggles and was trying to help me. And he knew how crazy I was getting. And lack of a better word, crazy. I mean, I absolutely thought I was crazy at that time. And the paranoia, all these things that were going on. Well, anyways, I was in the hospital, and what, they put me in a coma for a couple weeks. And once I healed physically, I went to a treatment facility to treat my disorders. And that, now I'm a full-blown alcoholic, right? So it's a dual diagnosis center where they deal with mental illness and self-medication or addiction. And I was in there for 6 months. Now, I don't know how smart you are, but I figured out that's half a year of my life. and and that's a long time. I was the longest standing citizen in there. People come in for a month or maybe two, and that'd be it. And I was there 6 months. You know, Thanksgiving, Christmas. I missed all that, and but I got well.
Yeah,
And
this is. I just want to chime in here for a second because when I was reading that, and I kept reading how your brain was thinking, like on how much time it was. All my brain kept thinking was, man, but you give them 3 months, give them 6 months, you get your life back.
right, but I didn't look at it that way.
Couldn't see it that way.
No, the first 2 months, I was an angry person, very, very angry and mean. And I have that push through attitude, right? And I just thought, you know what? I made a mistake. I won't drink anymore and get my meds right, and I'll be fine. I don't need 6 months in here. So the first 2 months were almost like a waste of time. But looking back, I guess I wouldn't, because I had to go through that anger and that denial. And, you know, it was part of the process, I guess, for me. So that's why the first 2 months it was they didn't know what to do with me, I think, half the time, because I was very, very angry. I grew a great big beard, and I didn't shower. You know, I just was, get me out of here. And but eventually I did get out, and that's when, now I've almost died 3 times: a jugular vein, a accidental overdose, and a
And a bullet
gunshot
to the head.
bullet to the head, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when I got the idea of writing a book. And I thought, you know what, there's people that probably need to hear my story, because now I'm in a good place. And I think, well, people that are in that dark, living in silence place, maybe can get something from my story. And I, I I wanted feedback on my book. I wanted to know if it was good or bad, or people liked it, you know. And in fact, before the book came out, and people asked me, was writing the book therapeutic? No, it was hell. And it was hard. It was opening up old wounds, and that I'd worked on for 6 months and more. And so that was really tough. But with my email being in the book, the feedback that I got, Sean, was unbelievable. Like, every day I was getting 20 or 30 emails, because the book was just out. And a week before the book came out, I was like, oh my God, I was so afraid, because, as you know, I threw everything out there. I didn't hold back. And I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should, not everybody needs to know everything. But once the book came out and I was getting this feedback, I went, oh my God, there is a lot of Clint Malarchuks out there. I didn't know that so many people struggled. People were saying, you're like a twin to me, thanking me, because what I put in words and in print, they had been feeling for maybe years, but didn't, because of the stigma, we suffer in silence. And I know people say, well, I'm going to go get help now. You made it okay. And yes, being a former NHL goaltender and coach helps, because it gives you a platform. And I guess they're like, well, if he can be honest and do that, I can go out there and get help. And I was getting this kind of feedback. And for me, I knew that I was sick. I knew I had problems. And with that guilt and shame of being mentally ill and the stigma, it's like, well, I know other people struggle, but they're not as sick as me. They're not as dark as me. They're not as crazy or just as ill as me, with paranoia and all the things that went along with it. And writing the book, I found out, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that struggle, but yeah, they're just as sick as I was. So that really changed my life. I got into public speaking, and loved that. Now that part is therapeutic for me, to talk to an audience. And I talk to corporations, schools, universities, a lot of military bases that I've been to. In fact, I just did a Zoom yesterday with a military group about the PTSD that I've went through, and that so many of them do. And people should realize, and I use this example because of the stigma, people think it's a weakness of mental illness. and it's not. It's a sickness. And it's like the doctor, when I got sent to the minors, it finally helped me for 14 years on a good medication. He explained it to me like no other doctor had. He said, Clint, what you have is a chemical imbalance of the brain. I was like, yeah, no shit, I'm a goalie. and he goes, well, your brain doesn't produce enough serotonin, which is the feel good chemical. And he says, like a diabetic doesn't produce enough insulin. So they need insulin. He says, what's the difference? Different organ. And that's when I went and I realized that it's a sickness and not a weakness. And getting back to the military, to me, they're the most toughest men and women to do that job mentally. They got to be tough to do that job. And yet, here in the States where I live now, it was as high as 22 suicides a day just from Afghanistan and Iraq veterans. They're trained like athletes, push through, no pain, no gain, all that. And they get PTSD from all the horror they see over there and experience. And they come back and they're struggling and they're struggling in silence because of the guilt and shame that goes with the stigma. And they self-medicate and die by suicide. And that's why I love doing the military. I love going to the bases, and they seem to relate to me and my story. And I've become friends. I do a lot with wounded warriors, and I've become friends with a lot of. In fact, they've come to my ranch here, some of them, and we've done some equine therapy, and so they know my story, and I hear theirs, and we bond, over an illness. But I think the point people have to realize that it is a sickness. It's not a weakness, and it can be cured.
That was a lot.
You're stuck for words now. And by the way, you read the book and took you all. I put pictures in there for guys like you.
I struggled with the fact that nobody could, when you read your point of view on it, I just screamed like, how did nobody notice? Like, how did nobody notice that this was going on? Because listeners should note that while a lot of this is going on, you're either playing in the NHL, playing in the IHL, coaching in the NHL. Like, it wasn't like you were just sitting in some cut off village with nobody around. Like, you were doing a full-time job at this.
Well, we become excellent actors. I mean, great actors. It's amazing how inside in your stomach and in your head, you're struggling, but you're able to somehow go to work and function. And then as soon as you're done and you're by yourself, it just floods back in. But we're very good actors. I always tell people I'm like Bradley Cooper, except I'm better looking. And we become great actors. We can hide it, and at least most of us can. And I spent my career hiding it. We did a reunion in Buffalo last year, and I was talking to Rick Vive, and he was getting ready to write his book and he goes, Clint, I read your book, and he goes, I played with you in Buffalo. I had no idea. The only thing that I thought was a little strange was for a goalie, you'd spend 4 or 5 hours in the gym after practice, and that was my OCD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he and I said, yeah, Rick, we're great actors. We hide it when we have to.
Yeah, it's well, that stuck out to me. That line, you have a line in the book where you talk about just being able to hide it, and I just, there's a lot of smart people around you, like really smart people. And after the first time, Clint, it comes out that you've had some, you've been diagnosed and you got medication, and everything else. I don't know. It just seemed to me like I was like. But in saying that, I got one of the things that made me pick the book back up again was COVID's really, with the lockdowns here in Alberta. Currently, we're not allowed to have anyone in our private residence, right? That's been difficult on people, that social aspect. And I've had people close to me open up about OCD and struggle, and it's become very evident that a lot of people are having difficulties, and maybe this seclusion is really starting to spur it on more and more and more.
Well, it's the seclusion, but it's also the stressors that go with COVID, like people like my public speaking has been shut down since COVID started. There's no conventions, there's no big gatherings. So financially, I'm taking a hit hard, and that's my main income. Yeah, I got my horse business, but my main income is the public speaking. And so there's a lot of people that are losing their jobs, layoffs, losing businesses. And so there's those stressors too, not just the seclusion. Yes, that's a big part of it, but the stressors that this is bringing on, and a lot of people have never experienced anxiety to a great degree, or maybe even depression. Really, we all know kind of what it's like, but now people are experiencing, big anxiety for the first time, and uncertainties and stress and depression and uncertain futures. And so I don't want to call those people mentally ill, but there's certainly an emotional distress. And that can be a taste of mental illness, of the depression and anxiety, at least.
Well, I'll sit on this side, and I can safely say that when I read your book or others that have, people have gone through some really um, difficult times, I count myself fortunate because I didn't play to the NHL by any stretch of the imagination, but I played, for 26 years of my life. That's what I did. I played hockey. I played all over the world. I lived with different people, and I never had a bad family. I just seemed to hit like the lottery card, so to speak. Everywhere I went, I was surrounded by good people that always had, for the most part, the best for what they wanted the best for you. And then you start digging into some stories on hockey, and man, there's some tough ones where you go, I don't know if I always just assumed there was more like me than like Clint. And then as you go along, you find out there's quite a few Clints. There's quite
Yeah.
a few people that they got the raw end of the deal.
Well, yeah, we're hearing stories more and more. Athletes are becoming more public. Articles in the Players Tribune and things like that. And I kind of like to think that I was a bit of a pioneer as far as the mental health part goes. I think Theo Fleury was, before me, but his was more on addiction, and mine's more on the mental illness thing. But yes, he, had the childhood trauma, well, teen trauma of,
Yeah.
what went on with him. And that's another thing that, and I talk to a lot of doctors, and I go to these conventions, and a big part of what happens to people is their childhood trauma. Yeah, they make it through, and it comes out later. Like with me, it took a traumatic, a life and death experience for it to really explode, right? Um, but yeah, that childhood trauma, and so many people can relate to, child abuse, childhood. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, sexual or anything like that. Just a alcoholic parent or two, or, addiction issues of any kind. And the kids grow up in that, and it doesn't always affect them right away. It's down the road where it ends up festering and comes out. And, I know a lot of mental illness comes out in people with their late 20s, early 30s. So, talking to all these doctors and psychiatrists, I've learned a lot on, what people go through and how it manifests in their lives. And yeah, certainly our childhoods is huge.
Well, another guy that comes to mind, you mentioned Theo Fleury. Jordan Tutu's been on the podcast, and he's
Yeah.
another guy who's opened up about some of his struggles and just
Well,
how it, I don't
right.
know if festered's the right word, but that's kind of what it
Well, we've had a lot of suicides. We've had, several suicides in the last 10 years or so, and overdoses. And overdoses, to me, sometimes is it a suicide or is it not? Or are they just taking that addiction because they don't care anymore? I don't care if I wake up, and, um, and Jordan Tutu lost his brother to suicide.
yeah.
So yeah, he's lived it, and he's come out public, and he's doing some things to help people. And that's the great thing, I think, with most of us. I talked to Corey Hirsch quite a bit and some other guys, and it seems if we can get through it and survive it, we end up being advocates and passionate.
Well, and that's where I kind of wanted to go is, you mentioned going through rehab and working on some things. What are you doing? Because you've mentioned relapse, right? Like you've mentioned where something spurred on post-traumatic and it just sends you reeling again. What are you doing now to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Well, and that's a great question. And when I do my public speaking, I obviously tell my story, but then people want to know, okay, well, how do you functioning today? And how did you get to functioning this way today? And, I've got a few things that I share. Definitely I take my medication and I check in with my doctor. Okay. I've learned to meditate. When I get squirrely, I need to take a time out. In fact, I heard this one time said, if you're having a bad day, you've lost your connection with your higher power, or your God, whoever it might be. And that's kind of true because when I start spinning, I think I'm in control of everything and I'm not. So I take a time out, get calmed down, and kind of let God take care of it. And I come back and go, well, I guess you took care of that, God. It doesn't seem to bother me anymore. And it's still there. The problem might be, but it doesn't bother me anymore because we can only control the things that we can control. I work out every day, the endorphin release. And I'd say one of the biggest things is being of service. And that's what's hard when I'm not out speaking, but I've been doing a lot of podcasts and being of service. Like I mentioned, I did one with the military yesterday. And so I'm still trying to be of service because it makes me feel good. And it makes me really feel good when I get the feedback where people go, whoa, I guess I can do what you're doing. And so being a service is huge for me. It is.
Helping people.
Yeah, yeah. Helping people. Honestly, getting people, like I've had people say, tell me that they were suicidal. They were thinking about suicide until they either heard me speak or read my book. And for me, that gratification, it's like a high. I feel we talk about purpose. And my purpose, I always thought was to be an NHL goalie, dreamed of it. And then I was lucky. And then I got to coach in the NHL. So I had a parallel line of somewhat success. I thought that was my purpose. But I always had these demons, this parallel line coming along with me. And, all the things, depression, anxiety, as a kid, all these things. There was times I'd be in the NHL going, why am I depressed? I've got the world by the tail, but I didn't know about chemicals in the brain and depression and how it worked. But that is why I say now I know my purpose. It wasn't to play in the NHL. Yeah, that gives me a platform, helps me with my speaking and obviously my book. But why did I go through all that crap to be where am today? So one parallel, the other parallel, and it comes to a peak. I know what my purpose is now. It took me 50 years to figure it out. But I have a saying that I like, our purpose in life is to figure out our purpose.
I was just going to say, man, you had to go through a lot of shit. We're not going to call it crap. We're going to call it shit to find your purpose. Like, I mean, I think a lot of people search for that, what their purpose in life is.
Yeah, I
right?
think so.
That's a big question to wrestle with.
Yeah, I think so. Purpose, what's the word? Self-love, security in yourself. A lot of people struggle with insecurity. And a lot of times on the outward side, they're the most secure. You probably played with guys that were very cocky. And then you find out about them and everything. You find out, no, it's a cover up of their insecurities. And that is very, very common with the athletes. Because, as a kid, this is kind of sick thinking. If I had and I still have to work on self-love, and it's probably from my childhood, my dad. But if I had a good game as a kid, I was a good kid. I was something. If I had a bad game, it wasn't a bad game. I was a shitty person. And that's where all my self-worth, that's the word I guess I was looking for. Self-worth. Yeah. Purpose, self-worth.
You know, when you speak in hockey terms like that, it's something. I got 3 little kids, and I'm definitely the oldest is just starting to get into hockey, like just learning how to skate. And I have to remind myself all the time that I just want him to have fun,
Yeah.
right? Just go out and have some fun. There's hard work and there's other things that go into it for sure. But at the end of the day, um, when you say, if you had a good game, well, wow, that was great. You feed off that energy. No different than if you had a poor game. Hell, we've already all been there as goaltenders. I'm sure you're even more in tune with that than the rest of us because you're the single guy.
Yeah.
When you have a bad game, you're already in a low, right? Like to get dumped on even more must have been wow.
Yeah.
I think it's just any hockey player, any sports athlete understands that like immediately.
Yeah. I read something Kelly Rudy wrote. He's a former goaltender. Everybody probably knows who he is. Hockey Night in Canada, and he said one of the longest skate was when you're a goaltender and you get pulled from a game is from skating from the net to the bench, and it's a long, miserable skate. It's a terrible feeling because basically you failed and everybody sees that and oh, you're no good, we're putting somebody else in. And obviously it's not always a bad game by the goalie. Sometimes the team just blitzes a team and the goalie had no chance, but that's how we feel. We take it to heart.
Yeah, well, there's another guy, right? Like in Kelly's book, he talks about um, dealing with exactly what, depression, anxiety, and he's, playing on a team with Gretzky and just like it goes back to what you said. I'm sitting in the NHL. Why am I depressed about this? Right? That's a real conundrum the brain works on that you can't bring together. Like that's a hard.
So would you probably agree with me that these professional athletes that are very insecure, but outwardly you would never know it, but I wonder if it's because they put so much stock in their game, in being in the NHL or the NFL or whatever. That's their dream. That's what they work for. And that's who they become instead of that's just a job they do. That's not who they are. And I think a lot of athletes struggle with that.
I would say I would agree with you, but I would take it one step further, and I would say that um, I can't speak for women. I can speak for majority of men. I think when I say that we don't want to look at ourselves as unsuccessful. So it doesn't matter if we're a hockey player or cowboy, uh, just in business in general. You wanna be successful. Being successful is a confidence thing. You kind of walk around, and so you mentioned several times, I think, in your stories that you didn't want to get help because help meant failure, and you didn't want that, right? That means you're less, and people are going to look at you like you're less. Well, I certainly get that. Like when I read that, I'm like, now that makes sense to me. That makes sense. I mean, you need to get help, but at the same time, admitting you need to get help is that I can't fix it on my own, and then people are going to portray that as a fail. I get that. And saying that as a guy watching, I've had friends, right, going, I don't think anybody's gonna. I think it's pretty manly to stand up and be like, I need help. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Vulnerable.
right.
Yeah. But, society and the way we're brought up as men is pretty much what you described. So, success is a big thing. And even to the point where you become your job, rather it's just something you do for a living. You're good at it, but it doesn't define you as a person.
And yet playing in the NHL, I can see how that would be really hard because especially in Canadian markets,
Yep.
which you've got to feel. I mean, Buffalo might as well. I mean, right? They're pretty much Canada. Like all those markets, I feel, when you watch the NHL, when COVID first came and the NHL shut down in Edmonton, it was kind of like, it was kind of nice to have no hockey to talk about for a bit. It was nice to talk about some things that weren't hockey. But the longer COVID dragged on, you went, oh man, I just need some hockey again to like talk about something that isn't political, isn't COVID, isn't XYZ, and having hockey going again. It certainly is nice. But now you hear it again where, you got like people forget. I know they're making lots of money. I know professional athletes make a lot of money. But geez, some of these kids are like 19 years old. Heck, even if they're 25, they're 25 years old, right? And like dealing with the pressures. Yeah. And dealing with all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it becomes who they are rather than it's a job they do. It's not what defines them as a person. And, I really struggled in school as a kid. And I think looking back, it was probably the anxiety that I had. Hated school and I wasn't good at it. And when you're not good at something, you usually don't like it. But I was good at hockey as a kid. It's all I wanted to do. But I think I was 38 years old. I was between coaching jobs and I was like, oh my God, hockey's all I know. And I thought, wait a minute, horses pretty good. You grew up around them. And so I went to school and became a horse dentist and a horse chiropractor. And I'll tell you what, I struggled in the written. In fact, the last person in the exam room, I was great in the wet lab working on the animals and that, but the written exam, and I was afraid of it. Hell, I wrote a book and I can barely read. And the last person to pass in their paper, I was still another hour and a half after the last person. So I struggled. But for me to go back to school and get a certificate, it was a big accomplishment for me, especially, that I struggled so mightily in school and I was very intimidated about going back to school. But I had a passion and it was horses, obviously hockey. But, I thought, well, if I can't coach, what am I going to do? So I went with the horses.
I've heard a lot of NHL guys specifically talk about when they retire, they spent their entire life playing, and now what do you do? But I'm a guy who played junior A, who played a little Division III, played, the lower levels. And I personally know guys who, when they were done their junior career, not even as far as I went, who just played junior A for 3 years. And when they were done at 21, had the same thought, like, well, now what do I do? Right. Yeah. Or went on and played college. And then what do I do? Right. When I came home at 26, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, what the hell do you do now? Right. Like, I mean, for all of us lower tier guys, maybe you can get a coaching job, but it certainly doesn't pay much off the hop, right? You're in the lower tiers of hockey, which there's nothing wrong with that. That is, that definitely separates the guys who are just looking for a paycheck or in it for the love, right? But at the same time, it's a shock, no matter when the end comes, to any athlete, probably of any sport, of just like, well, now what do I do? Because I've been groomed to think that all the life is hockey. And then when it comes to an end, it's like, well, you mentioned horses.
Well, and most of those guys, hockey defined them.
Yeah.
They were a hockey player, period. That's it. And their passion and love that's it. I was very fortunate that, I went right from playing into coaching. And, so you see a few guys that get that, but, I was very fortunate. And then I coached for 20 years or whatever. And in the meantime, between, I don't know, a coaching gig, that's when I did my horse dentistry and chiropractic schooling. But I was very lucky. I was fortunate to go right from, one love. They say the next best thing to being a player is being a coach. So I was fortunate to have the career I did. I think I was an average career as a player. And, to get an opportunity to coach, right away was certainly a blessing.
I don't know about average. I won't give you average, because I can sit here and say, how many teams are in the NHL in the 80s? 21. So you were one of 40, call it 42. But I mean, if you want to stretch it and bubble it up, I mean, you're like one of 60 goalies roughly who was playing back then. And pretty consistently by the mid part of your career. I don't think that's average. any
Well,
stretch of the imagination.
well, again, Sean, you're talking to a man that still has to work on self-love, very
Yeah.
insecure. Um, and I'm in the spare bedroom right now, and I'm looking at a couple plaques. I'm looking at me with an NHL All-Star jersey. It never really registered because I never thought I was that good. A plaque here, the Dodge NHL Performance Player of the Week. I was Player of the Week, and I'm going, how do you in the NHL? And I was Player of the Week many times and Player of the Month, and I still didn't get it. I'm going against Gretzky and Lemieux. They should be getting these. They usually did, but it never really registered until I looked back. And I was coaching too, and I'd hockey DB and find out statistics on certain guys that, man, they had a good run or whatever. And then you look at your numbers, and you played more games in the NHL, and so it's slowly sinking in, I guess, that I was okay. I was okay. Especially here's a thought. I wonder how good I could. And Kelly Rudy talked to me about this too. He said, how good could have Clint Malarchuk been if he wasn't struggling with all his demons? And sometimes I think about that, and other times I go, yeah, but that OCD, that's what I hang my hat on, that my work ethic. I outworked everybody. And so I never thought I had a lot of skill. And so I always felt like I had to outwork.
That what if game is a dangerous game. I was gonna say, you mentioned going from playing to coaching was a godsend, was a lifesaver, so to speak. For me, when I came home, I played senior hockey for like 9 years in Saskatchewan. Coming from Saskatchewan, that I tell you what, that cured the hockey. But stumbling upon doing this podcast has been as close to a hockey game as I can get. I don't know how to put, but like the nerves, like the energy, it's just, it gives me such a high. And actually, when COVID first started, I was only doing one a week. And when COVID first started, I was doing them all in person. Well, I mean, you can imagine what happened with COVID and everything else. And I had the choice of, well, I can figure this out, or I can let it slide. And I figured it out, and then now I'm on to 2 a week, because it just is such a mental game changer for me.
Right.
And I think, like everyone else, at the start of COVID, you felt that fear, that paralyzing that was happening to not just me but everybody. And I wish more people could find something of life after hockey or life after sports, because you got to dig around in it. And to play the what if game, I always go, what if I would have found this at like 25? Right? Like, where could I be if I'd been doing this for 10 years? Right. But then you got to go, yeah, but use the Clint theory. If you hadn't have gone through what you've gone through, it probably wouldn't be as good as it is, because you aren't the same person as you were when you've experienced some of the things you've gone through. And I look at your story, and what you love doing now is what you say is your purpose, is to talk to people and help people. And it's like, well, the only way Clint helps people is if he's got this story to tell.
Well, yeah, that's true. You have to have lived it. And that's kind of what I was saying about that. I couldn't be of help and of service. Yes, the NHL gave me a platform, but what I went through gives me something to talk about that I've, dealt with personally. I've been to the deep, dark place. I'm the guy with a gun to the head, So yeah, I see what you're saying, and that you're right. That what if thing it's useless to even go there. And I know my OCD is still there, and yes, I'm more in control of it. I've taken therapy and medication and that, but I still have it. I mean, when COVID started and my public speaking pretty much shut down, I thought, okay, what are you going to do now with your spare time? We didn't know how long it was going to be either. So after a couple months into COVID, I started to look at some other things, and of course they were, for me, designed to help people. So I started taking an online course to be a life coach. And then I got that. And then I was like, okay, now I'm an advanced certified life coach. So, and that's all about helping people, as a life coach. I like to call it a success coach, or, where I kind of you kind of pick a niche, and I'm in the probably more on the mental health and wellness niche of things. People that are struggling with anxiety, depression, and like we discussed, there's a lot now with the COVID.
Are you doing that actively then?
Yeah, I just started. Yeah.
How for the listeners, if anybody's listening and wants to work with you or get a hold of you, how do they go about doing that?
Malarchuk.com, and that's my website. And of course, it's mostly focused around my speaking and my book and that. But I think it's done where you can hit coaching or coach, and page will come up, and you can contact me. I think it's finished now. I have somebody working on it, anyways.
I think that's super cool for people to
Yeah.
be able to interact. And as a guy I've done, I think it was life coaching. Geez, I'm trying to think of what I used it as career coaching. Career coaching. That's what I'm thinking of. Because when I first came back, I was working for my dad and my two brothers, and it just at the end of the day, it wasn't me, right? Like but I didn't know how to get out of it. And I don't mean working with them. I just mean like, how do I figure out where to go? Because I mean, for so long as a hockey player, everything is like straightforward. You're either making the team or you're getting cut. And if you get cut, then you go to the next team, and you either make the team or you get cut, and you just keep going, right? And then when you're done, it's like, okay, the world's this giant ocean. What do you want to do? And like, you should be over the moon at the possibilities. But instead, you're kind of like locked by it. You're like, I don't know. Like, I
Well,
don't know.
sometimes it's fear too. You think of something, yeah, that'd be good, but oh, gee, I don't know. I'm kind of afraid I might not be good at that, or I'm afraid I'll go to school for that and I'll fail, or so fear it's a good motivator, but it's also a paralyzing deal too.
Yeah. Now I gotta know. I've been sitting here staring at the mass above your head.
Yeah, yeah.
You're the first guy I've read, and I'm not going to sit here and say I've read 1,000 hockey books, but I have read enough of them now, where your mom was making your goalie mask in the WHL. Is the one on the far left, is that any of her work or no?
She started in June when I was in midget, actually. Yeah, those are the first prototypes. They're the stuck to the face ones, and then there's another behind the angel up there, the Christmas angel. There's another molded one to the face, and then over here, I think there's one. Yep, there's another one over there. I think that was one of her real finished projects. The others were more like experimenting. Yeah, yeah. And I've tried to keep one from every team I played for, in the NHL.
Yeah. Well, I was laughing. When you're playing in Portland and you're talking about, and mom had made my mask, I was like, kids will just never understand. Like, I don't understand that. Like, by the time I'm playing, everybody's got the mask of the modern mask, I guess.
Yeah.
But you were in a time where it was face molded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when I played in the NHL, I was wearing a mama made mask.
Bull, when you say that again?
Yeah. When I turned pro, I wore a mask that my mom made.
So when you're in the NHL, you're wearing your mother had made the mask?
Yeah. 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 She made I probably wore that mask for I don't know, 6-7 years in the NHL before I finally, the team said, we're going to get you a new mask, and this guy makes them. And so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. 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 I think it was this one. And I don't know if you can see this or if this is even right. That one right there was when I turned pro. And these other ones were minor hockey and junior. That's a pro made one. That's a Washington pro made. Can you see them?
Yeah, you bet. Yeah.
And that's a Sabre mask, Buffalo Sabres. That was me in Las Vegas with later on when you get personality, I always had a steer skull on the forehead.
For all the listeners, go to YouTube so they can see that, because that's cool. I don't know. It seems like a ton of accessible people are in the NHL always seem to be goaltenders. And you guys have when you got designing your mask, right? You went from like the stick-on one, the form-fitted one, to like an actual modern-day mask, and you could actually have something painted on it. Do you remember talking to the artist? Where you like, this is what I want, or
Yeah. Yeah.
what was
I wanted a steer skull, like, just with that Western theme because of my background.
yeah?
The personality would come out. I think it was, yeah, I don't know. Well, I've got one in my, they're not all up here because I got another buffalo one. It's got the steer skull, but then it's got a lariat going around the side too. And that one, it must be still in the boxers or something.
Well, let's talk about I coming from Alberta, you know the Battle of Alberta a lot. You get drafted by Quebec. What was getting drafted like? Kids today are going to be like, "Oh, you were in, Montreal and you were getting drafted and the whole big draft day and TSN was there and everything else." Could you maybe lead us through getting drafted by Quebec?
Well, it was back in the day. There were, I maybe the first rounders would go to the draft city, but I was at home. I was hoping I missed the draft the first year I was eligible at 18. I didn't have a very good year in Portland. I was really homesick, and it affected me. Then the next year at 19, I got drafted, and I remember answering the phone, and it was the GM of the Quebec Nordiques, and so yeah, that was kind of like. And to be honest with you, I had a little bit of being a Westerner, and you probably know what I'm talking about with the, yeah. So it's like anywhere but Quebec.
Anywhere but Quebec. Yep.
But I was actually really fortunate to go there because it was a hockey mad city, and they just loved their Nordiques, and they didn't have a lot of depth in goal. So my first year, I actually played 2 NHL games. My first year of pro. Usually you play a few, especially as a goalie, you play 4 or 5 years in the minors, but then or in the American League usually. And I remember I got called up to Buffalo or to Quebec, and we played in Buffalo. And that's my first NHL game. Well, warm-ups, Jacques Richard, who's a 50-goal scorer and could really, shoot the puck. He hits me in the head, and I had to get stitches. So I missed half a warm-up while I'm laying on the table in the trainer's room getting stitches. And Michel Bergeron, our coach, comes in. He says, "Hey, kid, play. And they're stitching my ear. And I said, "I'm playing. I am not missing this opportunity." And I remember it ended up a tie game, and I got second star. So here I've arrived. I'm second star in the NHL. So we're going to go play the Stanley Cup champions, the Islanders, the next night. So
They weren't a good team at all.
no, Bossy couldn't even skate, right? And so I get the start, and we lose the game 10-7, and I let in all 10, and I thought, wow. Well, Billy Smith at the other end let in 7, so it's not that bad. Next day, I'm back in the minors. So as you know, with athletics, it's a roller coaster. One day you're second star and on top of the world. Next day you're getting shelled and you're back in the minors.
I got to know, with Quebec not having a team now, I can't even remember the year that they moved, but
I think it was 96, I believe.
yeah, it was right in that stretch of all the Canadian teams heading south. But Quebec, Montreal, there must have been a rivalry, and that's what I was bringing about with the Battle of Alberta.
Right.
All we know is Calgary, Edmonton, right? Like, and the Battle of Alberta isn't quite the same as what it was back in the 80s, even the early 90s. What was Quebec, Montreal like?
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it was very, very intense. Not just the teams, the fans, the media. Montreal versus Quebec media were always, japping each other or whatever. And it was very intense. And then, of course, the famous Good Friday brawl. It was Good Friday, and we played. It was a playoff game, and they called it Good Friday Massacre. And I was backing up that game, and I got 15 minutes in penalties and got thrown out of the game. I got that going for me.
In a bench clearing brawl?
Yeah. And I didn't even play a minute of the game, but I got 15 minutes in penalties and ejected from the game. Now that's hockey.
Now that's hockey. What was the old? Well, actually, I think here's a. I will never experience probably. Well, who knows? Maybe Quebec will get a hockey team here at some point.
I hope they do. I hope
Yeah?
they do. It's a great hockey city.
What were the fans like there? Because I, from what you talk about, I assume, or it seemed like it was electric.
They were rabid. They were, I mean, and they bled the blue of a Nordique. I mean, they were very, very rabid, like good energy and behind the team rally. But they loved us. They absolutely loved us there, and that's why I hope they do get they obviously have an arena built, a new state-of-the-art arena, and I'd love to see them. It'd be a good NHL franchise there. It really would.
Did you know French?
No.
How did you survive
Oh.
not knowing a lick of French?
Well, especially with the Nordiques, most of the team were French Canadian, and the few English guys, we had the Stasnys who were from Slovakia. So after certain like once a week, maybe after practice, they had this French teacher would come in, and I knew Pat Price from out west. He took French in school, so these guys. So I get called up, and I haven't had a French lesson yet. So I go in there for the lesson, and the lady's speaking French, and I don't understand a lick of it. And she's going around to each player in class, going blah 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 blah, and they knew enough to answer back and say blah 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 blah. I didn't have a clue. She comes to me and she's going blah 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 blah, and I'm looking at Dale Hunter, who is my buddy. I'm looking at Dale going, you maybe help me out a little bit here. And they're kind of grinning and smirking. And so the lady kept asking me whatever it was. And finally she snapped and said, "What is your address? Where do you live?" And I'm like, holy crap. I'm about 2 blocks from the rink. I just down there. I could walk here if I wanted to. And she kicked me out. She thought I was toying with her. I didn't know a word.
I'm sure you didn't do anything to spur that on. One of the lovely things of the book, it sounds like you're quite the character. When I asked different NHL guys who the biggest characters on the team were, you and Dale Hunter sound like just a pair made in heaven.
Dale and I were good friends, and we were roommates and cellmates, and we did everything together. And he was married and I wasn't at the time, but I was always at his house. He was a year older, so he was a veteran. But oh yeah, we got in trouble all the time. I mean, we really you do what we did today, you'd be with social media, we'd be fried.
If you did things, well, call it 15 years ago, Clint, you'd be fried. Right?
I mean,
like,
yeah, you can't go riding horses up and down the golf course, which Dale and I did, and getting in that kind of trouble. But we thought it was harmless. We weren't golfers, so we thought it was a nice fairway to open this horse up on.
I'm gonna have to ask for the listeners. You took horses up and down the fairway?
Oh yeah, I think that story's in my book. Yeah, and
with the marshal chasing you.
Well, yeah, that's right. You remember it. So we were kind of on a layover in LA, and we had a few days. So we did a team outing to Palm Springs, and I was saying to guys, because I'm a cowboy, I'm going, hey, you guys want to go we'll rent horses, go horseback riding. Like, yeah. And well, they lost our luggage, so guys didn't want to go ride a horse in a suit and tie. But Dale and I did. We went and got a couple horses. Well, the luggage got delivered to the resort we were staying at, and it was a golf resort. So we're riding up on this ridge. We look down, and the boys are all golfing. So Dale and I thought it'd be fun to go down there and steal the pins and joust and yeah. And the golf marshal was chasing us in a golf cart. And I didn't know anything about golf. So I see this, he's got Marshall written on the front of his cart. And I go, Dale, the marshal's after us. So we take off, and I'm shooting at him with my finger like this. And we're just having fun. But yeah, I don't think they liked us riding on the fairway and the greens, stealing the pins and
I could just imagine all the golfers listening to this cringing as two
yeah,
horses go trotting
yeah.
down the fairway.
Well, we did. So when Dale and I returned to the horse rental place, the Dude Ranch place, which wasn't far, there was a sheriff waiting there for us. And but fortunately, the coach and GM intervened, and they paid the damages on the golf course, and we didn't have to go to jail that day. Dale and I used to joke about, who do you call when you get put in jail? Well, your best friend. And Dale said, no, he should be sitting right beside you because we always were.
I've only ever had one encounter to the drunk tank, and this is when I think I was 18, and we took one of my best friends to, the bar for his 18th birthday. We ended up in the drunk tank. Only time I've ever been there. And I remember I was very, very, very sheepish to go to his parents' house. I thought I'd let them all down and whatever, just trying to have a little bit of fun on his 18th birthday. And I remember walking in, and I knew it was going to be all right because they posted a thing on the fridge, and it said, your best friend should be there to bail you out of jail. And then the other little angel said, no, he should be sitting right beside you.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, well, I guess we'll be okay.
Yeah, that was Dale and ours motto. That was our motto, But we did harmless stuff. I remember one time there was a big in Edmonton, and it was in the off season, and it was Klondike days in Edmonton. They have the fair and the carnival and all that. And we were at this big beer gardens, and big fight broke out. And I remember getting thrown in the paddy wagon, and I look across, and there's Troy Murray sitting across, played with the Blackhawks. Hey, Troy, what are you doing? Hey, Clint, how you doing? So we ended up having this great conversation with, 15 guys in a paddy wagon. They're going, who are these two guys?
Tell me about going to training camp the first time. That I think it feels like a lifetime ago, that smoking and drinking and all that, and training camp kind of being more like a conditioning camp to get guys ready for the season. Was that a culture shock, or like did you walk in expecting something, and then you walk in and it feels like men's league hockey, or so to speak?
Well, my first training camp, I remember, we did fitness testing the first day, which wasn't real excruciating like it is now, what they do for fitness testing. And I remember walking into this banquet room where they had bikes set up and, a push-up station, it was very minor stuff. But I see this guy riding a bike, kind of a heavy set guy, and he's smoking a cigarette. And I don't speak French, and he's speaking French, and everybody's laughing at what he's saying. And I thought it was a trainer because he looked kind of heavy. And I thought it was a trainer calibrating the bike for the testing. And so I said to somebody, I said, who's that, our trainer? He goes, no, kid, that's Moose DuPont, our captain. Smoking a cigarette, doing the bike test.
Doing the bike test.
Well, another time in Quebec, we had about 4 or 5 guys that smoked back then, and they had a smoking area, between periods they smoke and everything. And I remember Dan Bouchard was playing, I think it was an exhibition game. I wasn't dressed that game, and Michel Place was the number 2 guy at the time, goaltender. And so they split the game. So Bouchard comes out at the halfway point, and Place goes in. And the first whistle, the linesman skates to our bench and hands over a lighter and a pack of cigarettes that Michel Place used to keep in his pad. So when the period was over, he'd just go right to the spot to smoke. The game's changed a bit.
Game's changed just a slight bit. A fun story about your mom was that you would there used to be a phone on the bench, and you'd call her from that.
Yeah, that was in Buffalo, and way before cell phones and that, and not way before, but they weren't out yet. Anyways, yeah, there was a phone, and if you weren't playing as a goalie, you're sitting there right by the wall, and I see this phone, and it was a phone they used for the because the locker room wasn't like right behind the bench. It was, you had to go a different way to get to the locker room. So they trainers could call each other, hey, Joe needs a stick, or we need more tape or whatever. And I said, can you dial out on that? And this guy goes, yeah. I say, can I call my mom? And yeah, well, the game was on, and I got the phone. Hey, mom. It's going. She goes, what are you doing? I'm watching the game. How are you on the phone? I said, we got a phone on the bench.
I could just imagine the commentators going, "Oh, Malarchuk's on the phone again."
Yeah, probably homesick, calling his mom.
Well, I've appreciated you hopping on here. I don't want to take up much more of your day. We do a little fun little thing at the end where it's the Crude Master Final Five. A shout out to Heath and Tracy McDonald, supporters of the podcast since the very beginning. Just 5 quick questions, Clint. Long or short as we want to go. There's no timeline on it. The first one I always ask is, if you could sit down with somebody like me, like I'm doing to you, so to speak, and pick between their ears and get at their journey, their lessons learned, etc., who would be the guy you'd want
to talk to?
Yeah.
The headmaster at the dental school that I went to, the guy, he founded the school. He was just a really knowledgeable guy, not just in the horse industry, but in life lessons. Real fatherly type guy. That's a guy that I would love to spend more time with. His name was Dale Jeffries.
And a real mentor then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he got me a second career. You know, he tutored me. He encouraged me. I mean, horse dentistry is not easy, and it can be very frustrating when you're trying to learn. I mean, first of all, you're grinding on a horse's teeth, and the horse might not like it. So you got to deal with that too.
As I always find it, when I ask this question, it's always interesting the people pick, right? Like, for somebody, it's somebody famous. For another, God or Jesus comes up, and for you, it's just obviously somebody who's impacted your life.
Yeah. Well, you got to understand too, I struggled in school and as a kid and everything. And he saw my age going to school again. And he helped me. He definitely helped me. He helped me. He was like more of a private tutor, after class, he'd help me out and I had questions. But he also saw my passion. I was the guy hanging out, asking questions, say, hey, that one horse we were looking at? And, so he liked that, I guess.
If you could pick one goalie today, you had a career as a goalie coach that you could work with though in the NHL today, who would you want?
Oh boy, that's all. There's so many of them that they're so good. I know Carey Price a little bit, like I've met him, and we've had lunch together. He's just such a super guy as well as a great goaltender that, because of that relationship, I'd probably go with him. I will say that I absolutely loved working with Mikko Kiprasov. He was hilarious. You had to get his trust first. A funny thing about him, when he first came over from Finland, him and another goaltender, Johan Hedberg, they were playing together in Kentucky, the farm team for San Jose. And Johan told me the story that for 2 years that they played there, the coach didn't know that Kipper could speak English because Kipper played that game. He said, I don't want to talk to the coach. So he always pretended he couldn't speak English. He's a character. Really, really funny guy.
And of all, I'm not a Flames fan. I'm going to say that. I'm a diehard Oiler fan. But of all the Flames, Jerome McGinley's right up there. Lanny McDonald and Mikko Kiprasov was phenomenal to watch.
Yeah.
He was talented.
Yeah. Well, I watch Edmonton too, being a Northern Alberta kid. I kind of, and that McDavid and Draisaitl and, God, they just so dynamic and they're a fun team to watch. And they're not far away, from turning things really around. I know they're 1-3 right now.
Yeah, 1-3 to start. Not all the Oiler fans are loving life right now, but
yeah. But they get one thing about being an Oiler fan. I mean, you might not win every game, but boy, you're entertained by that McDavid and Draisaitl.
Oh yeah, anytime McDavid, there's very few players when they step on the ice, you're like, I don't know what they're gonna do, because he can make something out of nothing awfully quick.
I know. Well, his speed, he just blows by guys, and I can't imagine being a defenseman with seeing him coming. You're probably going, oh man, he's gonna go It's that fear of being embarrassed, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Speaking of fear of being embarrassed, if you had, who would you rather take, Gretzky or Lemieux coming down on you?
well, I always tell people, being from Alberta and then playing in Edmonton against the Oilers, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. And I always tell people that Gretzky wasn't very good. He was not that good until he started playing against me, and I got him all his confidence. um, but Lemieux, are you talking about a breakaway?
Hmm. I
Break, break,
guess.
breakaway Lemieux. I would not. He had such an incredible reach that he could DQ, with those long arms, long stick, and put the puck around you almost with effortlessly. Plus, he could snipe too. I mean, he liked on breakaways. He liked to go high glove, but it was high glove, bar down.
I would love if I could go back and watch those guys in their heyday. That'd be fun. I mean, you can still do it. I mean, you can watch the classics and you can watch it, but like to actually be in the building and see that, because now I've had the opportunity to go watch McDavid in his heyday. Well, I've got to watch quite a few superstars in their heyday, and it's like in the building and seeing it on ice.
Yeah.
Man, that's special.
Yeah.
If you could compete in one event at the Calgary Stampede, what would you take?
Saddle Bronc.
Saddle Bronc?
Yeah.
That's your event.
Well, Saddle Bronc bareback, but Saddle Bronc is a real skill and an art. Bareback is more of a hang on and muscle through. So Saddle Bronc is the traditional uh, event of rodeo.
Have you ever done an event at a rodeo before?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Lots. In fact, I was playing for Washington, and they had it was at the Stampede, and there's a picture on the front page of the Calgary Herald of me flying through the air, and back then they didn't have the internet, so I thought, well, Washington's never going to
Nobody
find
will
it.
ever know.
Well, there's a thing called American Press or whatever it's called, AP. I get a call from the from my mom, no cell phone, so she called the rodeo office, and so I got a message: call David Poyle, the GM of the Capitals, and he was not happy that I was rodeoing, and I of course said, no, that wasn't me, that was my brother Garth, that's a misprint.
Didn't buy it.
No.
Your final one. If you were boxing, you're walking into the ring. I know you got a little boxing background. You trained, that kind of thing. If you could walk into any song for your walk-in music, what would it be?
Oh, my heroes have always been cowboy. It's a little mellow, a little slow, but Willie Nelson, yeah, there's a few others. I'd have to think on that, but yeah, my heroes have always been cowboys.
Fair. That'll bring back. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Who doesn't love a little?
It's a little mellow for a boxing event, but it would stir me.
Hey, I mean, if you walked out and knocked a guy out, that it'd become a hit immediately, right? Like, I mean, what happens with? I just think of any winning team. They can have the most absurd song for their wins, but if they're winning, it catches on because that's what winning does.
Well, that just triggers the thought of when Chicago was rolling through to the cup. That one song they played every time they scored.
Chelsea's Dagger.
Is that what it is? I don't know what it's called, but it's a catchy tune.
It's a catchy tune.
Yeah.
Or when the St. Louis Blues won the cup and they had, I'm forgetting the song right now, but that became a huge hit, right? And it was just the song played in the dressing room, I think, if the story's correct, or at the bar, and then it transferred over to the dressing room because they started winning.
Buffalo Sabres, they've used this song whenever they come on the ice before the game, for the periods and all that. It's called Sabre Dance, and it's an instrumental, but it's a jazzy little tune, and it's Sabre Dance.
On a side note, I hadn't really thought about this till now. Does the name Skip Craik mean anything to you?
Yeah, yeah.
Skip's been on the podcast. Skip is here in Lloyd, and as soon as I don't know why it's taken this long to spur that thought on, but he played on the inaugural Buffalo Sabres team. He's got a set of original Sabres on his wall.
Yeah. That's so he's back in Lloyd.
Yeah.
Good
He's
for
been
him.
here for
Well,
off and on since the 80s.
I was out in Washington, D.C. I do a lot with the Wounded Warriors, and we put on these hockey tournaments for these Wounded Warriors. And we have a couple in D.C. And my old goalie coach from Buffalo, Mitch Korn, was the goalie coach in Washington. And so I called Mitch up. I said, hey, I'm in town. What do you want to, can we get together? So he set up a lunch with me. My wife was there. Mitch, PR guy, I think, was there, and Grubauer and Lloyd Boy Holtby.
Okay. Yeah. Braden.
Yeah. And they were both class acts, really nice guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Braden's, it's hard to he is a super nice guy. Yeah.
I noticed his tattoo. I think it was on his forearm, or maybe. Anyways, it's the province of Alberta and the province of Saskatchewan, and a star or something on the line, which is Lloydminster.
Yeah. Well, we're Canada's border city.
Yeah. And so I asked him, I said, is that Alberta I see? And, I didn't quite, because Saskatchewan's doesn't have the mountain jagged. And he goes, yeah. And he showed it to me. And we were talking tattoos, because I'm not a tattoo guy, but I did get one for, well, it's actually quite interesting. I don't know if you can see it or not. So I've almost died 3 times. It looks like an EKG, right?
Yeah.
I like the Native American and Native history. So I made an arrow, but the semicolon, if you ever look up the Semicolon Project, it's a suicide awareness prevention project from a gal that the semicolon represents it, I guess, in a sentence. It's used as a stop or a continue. And our kind of motto is with suicide, don't do it, continue. That pause, continue. So that's what the Semicolon Project means. And the gal that started it, unfortunately, she succumbed to suicide, I don't know, probably 10 years after she started this project. But it was very popular. A lot of people get little semicolons, right here or something.
That's a really cool story. I didn't know that.
Well, I'm a really cool guy.
Well, Clint, I appreciate you hopping on with me. This has been a ton of fun.
Oh, it has. It's one of the funnest ones I've done. Thank you.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time.